Yeah, so let's get started. Susie, so very exciting news. You'll be screening your film, Darla in Space, at Slam Dance. Can you just tell us a little bit about the film and how we can watch it?
Yeah, sure. It's a very low budget indie movie about a woman named Darla who meets a sentient orgasm granting yeast mother um and proceeds to go on an adventure with her. And it's I think we're starting to close out the festival run with Slam Dance of all things. And it's getting two screenings, I think all movies do. On the 20th, which is Saturday, I think at
Hmm.
10:30 in the morning, and then 24th, whatever day of the week that is, at
Wednesday.
3:45 in the
Hmm.
afternoon. Okay.
Yeah.
And we are playing alongside a really interesting and wonderful short animation called I keep wanting to say Fluke, but it's not.
It is
Um,
was here just a second ago. Flutz. Flutz, is that right?
but it
Flutes or
is
is it Flutz?
so it's pretty amazing,
Okay.
actually. We got a screener of it just to see what we're being paired with. It's really good. It's pretty fucking weird. So it's sort of like a
It's a
good
good,
match for
nice
Darla.
pairing. That's
Yes,
awesome.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really excited for you. It's a fantastic film. If you guys are in the area or Slamdance is such a big festival, I'm sure people will travel to it. Watch the film, watch
Yeah.
Susie's film. She's gonna be the next great breakout
I'm the next
director.
great Susie Moon.
No, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a great time. I'll leave all of the info down in the description. Again, that was Saturday the 20th at 10:30, and then the 24th, January 24th, Wednesday at 3:45. So again, I'll leave all the info down below. So do check it out. It's gonna be a great time. Congratulations again, Suze. That's such huge news. So
Yeah,
Yes, it
great.
is huge.
congratulations.
We're over the
Yeah.
moon.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Ecstatic about it.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about the 1985 film, The Color Purple. It's based on the Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Alice Walker and directed by the one and only Steven Spielberg. Um, yeah, Susie, so you introduced not introduced, but you picked this movie this week. Um, how did you first experience this film? And just kind of curious. And
It was one of the first movies I remember seeing in the theater, and
really, wow.
yeah, I was so young, and the good thing about like having immigrant parents and being an immigrant myself is almost sort of like um they didn't have the kind of notions that maybe American parents of that time had, where it's like these types of movies are appropriate for children and these are not. Was quite young. We all went to the theater and watched it, and I swear to God, I loved it. Like, just sitting there as a little kid,
Mm,
it was kind of amazing. I didn't get a lot of it, obviously,
right.
but having watched it numerous times over the years, like, throughout my childhood and then into adulthood, I just kinda grew to love it more. I read the book, and was, like, kind of reawakened to the story because it's so kinda different in a
It
lot of
is.
ways from the Spielberg. I also watched it before I even had notions about who Spielberg was. So it's not like in my first impression of it had a lot of like kind of layers of like assumptions and things like that about who can tell the story and who can't, and that type of thing.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so I'm like super jazzed to hear what y'all have to say about it and what your impressions are.
mm. Um, what about you, Dom? Same question.
Um, yeah, no, nowhere near that deep a connection. I have not read the book. I think I saw it once, I don't know, maybe between 15, 20 years ago, and then rewatched it last week.
Mm,
Um, I think probably the first time I watched it, I also didn't know or didn't have any like special connection that it was Spielberg or anything like that. I didn't have like whether you want to call that baggage or the opposite, whatever the opposite of baggage is, in terms of like expectations. Um, um, but yeah, it was I definitely enjoyed watching it last week and was like looking forward to this conversation because I think there's a
Mhm.
lot to talk about.
Yeah, I think so. How do you feel about it, Susie? Do you feel different watching it now, or I'm sure obviously we were just talking about how we've kind of matured and our tastes have kind of our palates have kind of changed as well. Do you feel differently watching it? Did you watch it recently,
Um,
and do you feel differently
yeah,
about it?
I watched most of it, sort of like fast forwarding through a lot of it yesterday, and I still love it, you guys. I mean, I don't know. It's like I don't know why I have such a connection with it. My mom also really loves this movie, so it could
Mm,
be like I've got even an additional ripple of influence. I don't know.
it
I
is
mean, like
interesting,
before
right?
I get into it, because I could talk endlessly, really, like
Really,
I'm
yeah.
loving
Yeah, it is interesting, like the childhood, like not nostalgia, but like just that the connection that you have with the film, watching it as a kid. It just there is this sort of like
it.
really strong bond there. I'm
It
sure I
leaves an
have,
impression that kind of doesn't go away sometimes. I mean,
yeah,
some movies do,
yeah,
but this one kind of really stuck with me. I think the initial sort of like shock of seeing blood on the screen in like a really big way as a little kid is like kind of shocking because you
mm,
only associate that with violence or horror, but it wasn't like that. And so you're just like really interested in,
mm,
yeah, and none of it was confusing, I don't think at the time. Of course, I don't remember, but it's a very long story of Celie going through from like adolescence into middle age.
yeah,
And just like her, a big old chunk of her life that you get to see and watch her development and growth in it. And it's so satisfying and fulfilling. I'm like getting
mm,
chills just even like remembering certain scenes, but
mm, yeah. I mean, I guess we'll start at the beginning. We'll start at the first shot. Do you guys remember what the first shot is, Susie?
um it is the cosmos flowers, aren't
Yeah,
they? They're like
yeah,
the
yeah. What do you think? What do you think about the first shot? What do you think about the opening?
I don't know,
Any-
somebody else go first.
Anything strike you, Dom, about the that opening shot and just kind of the because it is very vivid and yeah, I think like for me, like obviously I'm not a historian. I'm not I don't think I'm well versed enough to talk about like the historical aspects, but like how Spielberg handles the material, I think is interesting. I think he has a lot of success, like and watching it, yeah, I think there are a lot of like bizarre moments to me as well, in the film. So yeah, I kind of do want to touch on his success and his some of his failures, I think, in the film. Um, so what do you think, Dom, about the opening? Any
Yeah,
particular
I
thoughts?
mean, I think it was kind of I think it was kind of brilliant, honestly, the opening. I think it was Spielberg letting the audience know that like it's gonna be what we now think of as a Spielberg movie in a way, like opening the movie kind of talking about and showing beauty
Mm,
because you're gonna get like out of the what 2.5 hours, like at least 2 hours of it is just so like gut wrenching and heartbreaking, and just this like woman and several other people just getting like just going through the ringer. So to me, it was kind of like a promise to the audience, like this is going to be um it's not going to be the drudgery of a lot of award films that are, and I think it's even more true now, but a lot of films you watch, and even the ones that you know are great, you kind of dread watching them because you're like, oh, this is going to be so painful to watch. This was not like if you know nothing about the film, or if you kind of know, but you open it and it's kind of like there's this soft narration and this color, and it's talking about beauty, and it's kind of like this promise, like this is important and we're going to get around to this too. It's not going to be this story of this woman who is just starts with a terrible start and and gets broken down continuously and then ends with a terrible end. Like, I don't think anyone who's ever seen a film before would watch the movie and think that that's what's going to happen based on that opening.
Mm. Yeah, there's this beauty and this grace, like all throughout the film, I think. Like the way that it's framed and it's shot, like that the theme of even the purple flowers, it's kind of you see the flowers a lot, even during terrible events. Um, so yeah, it was interesting to me, um, how Spielberg framed this. That first image is very telling. Like I think I understand what he's trying to do. Um, that there is like this grace of God, and this sort of like presence there. Again, even in just very harrowing, just terrible situations. So I guess we'll talk about that a little bit too. But Susie, any thoughts about the opening?
Yeah, I like what you both have to say about the framing of it. Um, it's funny because like having watched it so many times, it's only emotional for me as opposed to like I'm watching it for um the technical skills
Mm,
that this man has, obviously. Um, it's like now I watch it and I'm able to say like, oh God, Spielberg, yes, or like Spielberg, no.
mm,
But I think it's because he treats the characters with such sensitivity and depth that he can only succeed. Um, there's nobody who's all good or all bad. I mean, there are people obviously that do very make poor decisions and do very evil things. But I don't know, that kind of like goes back to what like something that was brought up in a previous one of these where it was like had to do with the who deserves what. And Danny Glover's character being uh a wife beater and all these things, nevertheless gets a moment of grace for himself. I mean, he is not just a superficially treated character. He's got regrets and pain. We don't know a whole lot of it. We see a little of his father and realize that he didn't get really a lot of guidance from him necessarily, so that he could not impart any to his own children, possibly. But that matters less than what Danny Glover's character chooses to do in terms of like breaking the chain or the cycle, as it were, and decide to act with love. I know I'm like now stretching, but like as far as the that intro scene, it is like, I don't know, it's not even a minute, I wanna say, and it's just goes through establishing the characters. These 2 are sisters. You very quickly realize one of them's pregnant, and they look like children. They're playing a child's game, so it's kinda confusing. Then the father comes up, and this man is, not very sympathetic. Very I mean, just as soon as he comes on the scene, and then we're off and rolling. Um,
But
it's brilliant. It's sort of just like it hits the ground running. That's like the textbook definition of it almost.
but I just think like that's why it's so key, right? Because if you're starting the story with plot, it's a young girl mid-birth screaming, getting you into, that's a very easy way to start this film, right? It's very cinematic, it's
Yes.
very, but he doesn't do that. And I think that was such a good decision, right? Because if you
Mhm.
if you if you start with that and then you quickly learn like, oh, and this is a baby product of incest and they're taking the baby away, then you start watching this movie and you're like, oh God, like I'm a little bit afraid to watch this movie because this is just gonna be it's just gonna be nothing but sadness straight through. And I'm like, why do I don't know if I want to sign up for this. I don't know if I'm ready for this. But instead you get voiceover, you get, children playing in beautiful fields, and you get the feeling like I'm gonna tell you this story and I promise you it's gonna be worth it for you to come on this journey with me.
Yeah, even the credits are very gentle.
They're purple. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
purple script. I mean, you're right though. Yeah.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean that's all. I mean that's yeah, I get what you guys are saying. That's also a big criticism though of Spielberg, right? Like that he comforts as opposed to you know, because that is a very like it's one of the most like atrocious like moments in our history and in our past, right? And to kind of present it in that sort of a way where it is vivid and full of color and um again when some of these like really terrible like hopeless things are happening to some of these characters, it's like um
Do
yeah,
you mean about the African American experience in that period of
sure,
time in America?
yeah.
Okay, yes.
um like I think some people would say like what God, right? Like that's these awful things are happening and I don't know like the Albert character, like I think I think he is there are moments where he is completely two-dimensional and like um it's not even that he's two-dimensional. I think his portrayal, like the way Spielberg captures him sometimes. Like I remember this moment when he's I don't know, cleaning up hay or something from a truck and he's talking to his son Harpo and he's saying to him like you need to keep Sophia in check by beating her, right? You need to beat her. And there's this music in the background. It's like this wah, 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 like this trumpet music. And it's like this, it's like almost like this Disney sort of music that's playing in the background. I'm like what exactly is that? Like, is this like a joke or like Harpo falling through the roof like four times? You know what I mean? Like they feel like cartoon characters.
Yeah.
I was like, what
Wow.
is this? Like
No,
this doesn't
but
feel
don't
like
see,
he doesn't feel like he knows what he's doing, you know?
I have a question then, because I had this feeling, and I don't know if I was just watching the film too closely, but I actually thought a moment of brilliant performance on Danny Glover's part was when Celie first goes to be his wife, and she says, I think she's combing the child's hair, and she's trying to get her to stop screaming,
Mm,
and she says, I can't, like it hurts her. And instead of just like, hitting her right away, I thought there's this really brilliant moment on Danny Glover's part where he doesn't, his instinct is not to hit her, but he has this like moment where he thinks about it and is almost like remembering, like maybe he's learned or been taught, like,
mm,
I need to hit her to keep her in check. Like it didn't seem like it wasn't this moment of like, you know, keep that child quiet. It was like, if you rewatch it, there's like a good like 10 or 15 seconds where he's almost like deciding that what he has to do is beat his wife because he has to keep her in check to be subservient. And it was not that that's obviously an excuse, like it's a terrible action that he takes, but I thought it was like a really great acting moment because it was like him trying as hard as he can, at least with that action, to not make him a monster. And then later, that like I feel like that filled in really nicely because when you do meet his father, you could very easily imagine like this is what his father has told him, is that you have to keep women, like you have to do this in order to keep them in check. And then Harpo marries a woman who actually is independent and has a mind of her own. And so he's kind of like, you got to beat her. It's just, and then, Whoopi Goldberg, I think one of the key moments is she says, you got to beat her.
yeah.
And that's like such a betrayal and somebody who's in that position. But it's also like, it was so real, I think, and so nuanced to have like it's almost like she's not taking into consideration the feelings or the fact that this person. It's more like, well, the solution to this problem of this person who's out of check is to beat them. Um, and like as far as the other thing I want to say before I forget is you said like the whole God of it all in the fields, like the other big moment that I took away was when Whoopi Goldberg, someone, I forget which character, but someone's telling her, maybe it's Oprah Winfrey's character, like, you got to fight back, you got to stand up for yourself. And like, that's such a, like, as an audience, we're thinking that for so long. And what she says is, we're only on this world, in this world a short time, but heaven is forever. And
Hmm.
so for me, like I like sat back. I was like, oh man, like it's so easy to victim blame and tell someone like you got to get yourself out of the situation. Like, why would you stand for this? But like that was actually a really believable mentality for a victim, like or a reason for a victim to act that way. If they think, well, if I do this, I'm going to be acting poorly, and that is going to look like I'm going to look bad before God, and that's less important. Like I'll take it, I'll grin and bear it now because my soul is more important, and I'm not going to do anything that is bad. So to me, it was like as much as I was like so frustrated and wanted the character to stand up for herself, I was like, wait a minute, like I kind of get it now. Like I get why she's doing that, like she believes that she has to act properly and that she'll be rewarded for that in the next, in the next life. And we get the example then Oprah Winfrey does act the way we kind of all want her to, right? We all want her to stand up for her, and she gets put in jail for however many years and almost ruined as a person. So there's a lot of like complication in the film with like you can't, it's not as simple or as easy as like just be a rebel, just stand up for yourself, just do it. It's like no, the circumstances of the world right now won't allow for that, and you're actually going to be worse off somehow if you do that. And Oprah Winfrey learns that the hard way when she actually is considering killing him essentially, and she says like don't make the same mistake I did. Like Oprah Winfrey's character has to go through all of that in order to get there. And so, like, for me, that's really complicated. And I think if I was younger watching this, I probably wouldn't have been able to get there. I probably would have been at the base level of like, this woman needs to stand up for herself and get away, and that's it, and not been able to really understand the nuance of like, well, what options does she have? And like, it's not so easy to just tell her to go and leave this situation.
Yeah, two really powerful moments. Yeah, when Celie says, "Yeah, yeah, you should beat her." I was like, "Wow, yeah, that's yeah, it seems accurate. It seems like something she would say." Which is yeah, again like shocking and then not, and then when that happens to Sophia, when she goes to jail for however many years she went to jail for, and she comes out like a broken person, like really, yeah, really, really heartbreaking. Um, and yeah,
I'm interested to hear more about what you were saying with Harpo's his running gag of falling through
I
the
just,
roof.
I just didn't like. It just didn't seem like it belonged in the
Was it
film.
totally
Like
weird for you?
it wasn't for you. It wasn't for you.
Um,
It was like again, it was like a Disney moment in like this film that like I didn't understand. Like, why are you
I know
showing
what
me
you're
this?
talking about and the music and everything.
It's so goofy. Like, and you know what's interesting? Like, I'll give him his credit. Like, the second half of the film feels like a different film after she gets the letters, after she finds the letters from Nettie, and
Uh-huh.
she puts it in a book, like Suge says to like put it in the book, and she starts reading it. Like, it feels different. Like, he doesn't run those gags anymore, and Spielberg doesn't. And it feels I don't know. It feels like a different person directed it almost. It feels soft. It feels I don't know, like thoughtful. And I just didn't feel that way about the first like half of the film. It just felt like even the rock scene, right? When she um Whoopi Goldberg, Celie first arrives at at the house, and Harpo throws a rock at her head.
Oh yeah,
Right.
shakes it at her.
And then you see her like falling on the rock, and that's the first time you see blood, right? If I'm not mistaken. Or that's the first time you kind of
Well, you see blood during the
right,
childbirthing
right.
earlier, but this is like a scene that's like maybe 2 minutes later or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, where she like her bloody handprint lands
You
on
don't
that
see
rock.
yeah, you don't see like the direct like, well, I guess you don't see the her face, and you don't see like Harpo. Like you don't have like a, because he's a kid, right? And like it just makes me ask a lot of questions about like, does he do this? Like, does he does he throw rocks at people, like at women, and like and
I
just not,
imagine so
yeah,
at others that you know what I mean? I guess like I do know what you're talking about as far as the lighthearted music and the tone of those types of scenes. And even like at this time watching it, I was like, oh, because Celie looks out the window the next day with like her bandaged head and she's about to wash out the kitchen and she sees Harpo out the window
yeah.
and he's just like a goofball, like as if he did not injure somebody, you know
He
what I
threw a
mean?
rock at her head.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but the fact is like I mean, to me, it's just that stuff like that happens alongside great stuff, alongside abysmally horrible stuff, like right after the other. Like life really just does that to you. Not a lot, not with that kind of music, but it's sort of like um, I think that around that time in the mid 80s and even into the 90s, I want to say that there was more um there was like I don't even know how to put it. There was more stuff like that where it's like you can have a psychological thriller or something with several lighthearted moments all throughout. You know, I'm trying to come up with examples right now that
Yeah.
illustrate my point.
Mhm.
But it was a different kind of style too back then.
Yeah.
And it could just be that I have not really had a long enough break from Color Purple, but like to me it's all like nevertheless consistent and stayed with me to this day where I actually appreciate it now because like when I have movies that are the same tone and
Mm.
like desperately serious from beginning to
Yeah.
end, I'm like,
I'm not saying it needs to be
okay.
desperately serious. I'm just
Mm,
saying that like to me it just doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make like
yeah.
the scenes don't make sense in the film. It just, you can have lighthearted, playful, you can have all sorts of moments, but like the way it's covered and the way it's handled with the music and with like yeah, it doesn't fit. You know, it's a hard thing to express. Like I'm having a hard time. Like I was trying to like in my mind, I was trying to like come up with how to say this, but like yeah, is there's just something that just like is so odd to me about Spielberg's films. It's not just this one. It's just a lot of his
Oh,
films
okay.
do things like this, and it's just yeah, it makes me wonder like what would have happened if someone else took the reins on this. Do you think he
I
had?
just
I haven't read a lot about like his work on
The
this, but
making of.
yeah,
I don't
I'm
know
sure he
anything about the making of at
yeah,
all.
I'm sure he's had like help and advice, right? I mean, he's not a black person.
I would hope
Um,
so.
I would hope so too. Like, so yeah, it's kind of just how I felt
I,
about it, I suppose. Yeah.
I just so regarding like the throwing the rock thing, I thought that served a very important purpose, which was like because that's when she first goes there. So I thought that served as to introduce to let us know Albert's not gonna stick up for her. Like his kids are more important than her.
Right.
Because like I was expecting him to like yell. He has no problem yelling at the boy in general, but like him hitting her in the head with a rock is not something that rises to the level of getting of yelling at him for doing.
Mhm.
So to me, that like immediately told us like, okay, he really doesn't care about this girl. Like his kids are more important than this girl. They're gonna be like in the hierarchy, like it's him and the kids all over this girl, and she's just gonna be like their like servant almost. So I thought that was really important. And then like in terms of like the specific scenes of him of Harpo falling through the roof and stuff like that, like I get what you're saying in terms of like I don't think they were the most well executed. I don't think they fit perfectly. But the other side of that is I appreciate the mix of like, it's a stretch to call that comic relief, but it's the closest you get to comic relief in this film. And I was saying like I think that's kind of what I appreciate about it, because the modern day version of this thing is just so dark from beginning to end that that's the type of film that makes me feel like I don't know, why did I watch this? Or
Mm,
definitely it's a one watch film. Like there's plenty of these movies that come out for Oscars that you watch and you really appreciate, but when they finish, like I'm never gonna watch that again because it just puts you through the ringer. Um, and like I think what you say about like if somebody else handled it, like again, I'm not the hugest Spielberg fan, but I think that he's a great filmmaker in that he he does a certain thing and he does it really well.
yeah,
And I think
I would agree.
everyone who knew he was going to make The Color Purple expected something like this.
Yes,
I have no
absolutely.
doubt that it would be much darker in other hands, but like you can only do what you do, right? It's like your voice as a director, and this is, you know, it was less over the top Spielberg, I think, than a lot of the films of his that I've seen. It's not the like he made the Goonies out of The Color Purple, right? Like he actually I don't think he directed that, he produced that, but I think the like it has that same type of feel, right? That almost like nostalgic 80s comic relief. Things don't really have consequences, but like if they're funny enough, we'll just throw them in.
Yeah.
Um, but I think so. The question is, do you think The Color Purple would be a better film without any comic relief?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the comic relief. Again, it's just a different kind of comic. It's not some sort of a gag, you know. You can find humor. There's lots of ways to express humor. And you can do that in small moments. I mean, it's hard to break everything down, but like, yeah, it's just,
It was
um,
distracting for you, I think.
yeah,
It-
it's like why, like why? There are other ways to. Again, there are other lighthearted ways. Like there are other things that you can do. I thought the writing was strong. And the moments, yeah, I totally agree with you, Dom, about that rock incident. But again, it's just the way that this is a PG-13 movie, right? I think it is.
I don't know. It's so
Something like
long
that.
ago that the ratings
Yeah,
don't really mean anything
yeah,
in it
yeah.
now
I
anyway.
suppose not.
Like
Yeah, again, I kind of I understand like why they cover things the way that they did, and yeah, again, it's not as intense as the book, right? It's like, um,
I want to hear about that actually. I mean, did both of you read the book? I know
yeah,
Susie read the
I
book.
did.
Yeah.
What do you think,
What did you
Susie?
think
Like,
of the
how
book,
did
Sam?
you? I thought it was great. I thought the writing was incredible. Like, it was
Isn't it
incredibly powerful.
great? It's
Yeah,
Dom, so like it's um it's just a series of
letters.
Seeley's conversations with
Yeah,
God. And so much the way like her narration in the movie goes,
dear God.
that's
Yeah,
the structure it takes in the novel. And it's a very short one. And it kind of just establishes like her early life, her married life. It's very much more explicit about her relationship with Shug, and that it deserves like a whole other.
right.
I mean, I feel like Spielberg, man, he did his best. You know what I mean? It's sort of like
uh,
I actually I don't know. I mean, he made a choice of like what he wanted this movie to be, and
mm.
I think he fulfilled that. Um,
Again, those last moments
but it's
those ending moments are strong. Like, I have to give him his like those. Yeah, the final scenes of the movie, even like they're quite powerful. I think he did a
they're
great job. Yeah,
complicated relationships, and he gives
yeah, they are
me
complicated. Yeah.
yeah, he gives me all I need to know in order to complete this picture of Ceely's life.
Mm,
And in the book, is the ending as happy? Like I didn't know whether to attribute like all the loose ends being tied up in a relatively happy way because of Spielberg
I
or if
don't
because it's the
remember.
book.
I don't remember the
it's hopeful. Yeah. Yeah. There's
I don't
I
know. The
think
thing that
because I
stuck out
think
to
because
me
the
was like
writing is so strong, like it's hard to fuck this up. Like it's hard
but there's like
it
so the thing that I wanted to ask too was like at the end there's this revelation that her actual father had passed away earlier and that the guy who raped her was not her biological father. And I was like, is that in the book or did
Did
they
it
just
pop
put
out?
that in to make it more palatable? Because it's like, let's at least get the incest out of this. Like, do you
I
know if
think
that is in
I
the
think that was in the book, but now I'm
yeah, that
not
was.
sure.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because I was like, there were certain things like that were just so like neatly wrapped up in terms of like everybody gets their, Oprah Winfrey's character snaps out of it and becomes like, I'm gonna roll like every single person. But again, like I felt like it worked for me. Like I felt kind of similar to when we talked about the Christmas Carol, right? It's like the jubilation you feel when people who have gone through something nightmarish like finally are feeling like something positive can happen. Like it felt earned rather than manipulative to me when I at the end when I was like whatever joy I was feeling, I was like, well, yeah, because I watched these people go through terrible things for over 2 hours, and so now they're getting something finally that is not horrible, and I feel good about that. And it's like to me, it felt earned. But I mean, I assume for Susie, it also felt earned. I don't know if it
Yeah.
felt more manipulative for you, Soul, or if it
Yeah, I think it
was,
did. Sure.
It
Like
didn't
again,
feel
I think it's
manipulative
just a
for you
I think
though?
I'm sorry, Susie, go ahead.
No, it felt manipulative for you?
For me,
Mm.
manipulative. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I just watched it like a day and a half ago. Um, yeah, I don't know. I have to kind of think about that. I'm not sure. The moments between even in the obviously it's not as we don't delve into to their it's a different relationship also, but the Celie and Shug relationship. I thought it was well covered. Like I thought it was well done in the film. The part where Celie says, Albert beats me for not being you. Yeah, I thought the way the acting and the way that was covered and just the intimacy between them, I thought it was well done. You know, how do you feel about their portrayal in the film, Susie?
Um, I was satisfied with it. I think that the book is different in that regard. Well, is it though? It's as seminal in the book as it is in the movie.
Mm,
It's critical to her development, like that next jump.
yeah.
It's the first time she thinks that she can even get away from Mr. Albert. I at times would watch the Easter dinner scene and be interested in the way um Albert's, I guess, like the fake narrative that he's been trying to peddle is that Celie doesn't have children, she never had any of these things. What sister? What? Or is that, am I don't know. It sort of like struck me, I think, a couple years ago where I was like, has he really been trying to convince her? Is he like gaslighting her in this way? Or is it just like, just shut up about it. Nobody cares about you. I
Mm,
wasn't sure like how to take that. Um, I found it interesting that it's Suge at that scene that's like just everybody settle down like a little bit, she's got that energy.
mm,
Um, yeah. I mean, that's an incredible scene.
yeah.
yeah. I mean, she has the advantage of everyone loving her, right? Like
Right.
Albert, she's the one that got away. He wanted to marry her if he could, if he could have. And then I thought there's one really beautiful line. I don't remember it exactly, but after they kiss, she says the narration just something like I followed her around like honey after that or something like
Yeah.
that. And it's just like for me, it's like that immediately I knew like, okay, this is a relationship that really means a lot to me. And then that, you know, when she goes with her to leave at the end, that made a lot of sense. I mean, the only thing honestly that I questioned, which felt a little bit too like tie a bow on it, was Albert's redemption. Because when Celie is leaving, she was like, until you do right by me. And I was thinking, like, this character shouldn't even believe that there's a way that this man can do right by her at this point. Like, what could he possibly do to do right by her? Is it money that she's owed? Is it, and like, ultimately, I guess what he does right by her is that he works with immigration to get her family, her sister, and kids over, right? But I don't think she could know necessarily. Like, there's something in the letter that says like we're going to work with immigration to try to come over here, but I don't think she could know that they're going to contact Albert and ask him for help with that. I don't think she had that in mind when she's saying like you do right by me. I don't think she's saying like, hey, help my sister and kids get over here. So to me, it was more like, why would she even be saying do right by me? Like what in
Mm.
her head is him doing right by her? And like I didn't know if that was
Maybe
more
she's
clear
just
in the book.
announcing her truth. She's saying it to the god of the movie, maybe.
Yeah, that's how I felt
And
too.
yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with like her demanding directly from Albert, you need to do you know.
Yeah, believe in
It's
God.
almost like the unspoken thing that she is like, you just gotta fucking do right by yourself, by the world. Be a
So
human
I see.
being, you know
I
what I mean?
see.
Like
So
that.
I see.
But that didn't come until later for me.
But so it's more like I'm leaving you and you're never gonna have anything unless you decide to like be a better person. That's what she
Yeah.
means kind of. I could
Yeah.
buy that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's just that the way the movie allows him to do that is through the immigration thing for me. Like that's how I read that was like the fact that he did that. I was also a little confused visually at the end when they do arrive. It's almost like he's in a field watching it happen. Like I was confused by the literal physical location
Hmm.
when all of that's happening and she's finally meeting her children and her sister. I feel like there was a cutaway to Albert in a field, and it was almost like he knew or was
Um,
seeing that happen. Do you
Yeah, he
remember
was
this?
leading that ox or a cow, and it's like silhouetted at points, and then it's Shug that you follow her gaze from the purple scarves and then over onto Albert's farm. I get the feeling that like the geography is that they are not super far from each other.
mm,
Like so Celie's old home that she ends up taking over and then putting her pants shop in
Mhm.
is I mean yeah, like in that scene though, it does make it look like hi neighbor. And
Yeah.
I don't know that they were ever that yeah, but that might have just been like a camera cheat. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know if I had just missed like the proximity of it or if there was a note that like it's a neighboring. I mean, either way, it makes logical sense, right? Because she, it's a neighbor who she essentially gets given to as a
Mhm.
child. So that it doesn't, it's not that it gets illogical. It's just for something that is so masterfully done. Like, usually I don't have a moment of like confusion with visuals. And to me, I was a little bit confused there of like, what's he showing here? Like, is he showing him seeing this or not? There wasn't one shot that connected the two.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit confused, and it doesn't really matter that much, right? Like it could even be him almost like feeling it happening or
yeah,
just
that's what I
knowing
was
that it
like.
would.
That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
too. Like it's kind of this like connection. Yeah, it's like that's what Spielberg does though. That's kind of my issue with him. It's like you don't have to dude. You don't have to answer all the questions, my friend. Like you can just like let people think about things instead of like you know, like pushing it down your throat sometimes. It's just I don't know. He's
I don't, he might be getting more like that in more recent movies. I mean, I don't know, in Color Purple too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Think like
I
let,
just
let
think
people
that's who
give
he
people
is,
room
right?
sometimes. Just give people
I don't
room.
think I don't think he's wants there to be loose ends. I don't think he wants. I think his goal, as much as he has a singular goal, is to create a certain feeling that people come
Yeah.
away with,
Yeah.
which is different than the goal of like, I want to get people thinking. I want to get like, I don't,
Isn't it
Yeah.
important
if it
though
is
to
one of his
get
goals,
people
it's,
thinking in this movie? Like, you don't think that's
well, he
is
gets
that not
people
a
thinking about the situation, about the character, I think through the course of it. But for him, it's more like, okay, but I want to know what they come away feeling to a certain extent. And even that, like, I had a mixed emotion at the very end. It was mostly like this fulfilled, everything is good, like looking up, etc. But I did have a moment where I thought to myself, is this enough? Like we watched Celie go through so much
yeah.
and we only get one life, right? And she lost what, 50 years of her life, and now I'm happy, I'm thrilled that she's getting something, right? But is it enough? Like, has
It's
so much been taken from her that it's still nowhere near fair,
that's such a great point. That's such a great point because like I recently watched. I think I talked about it during our Shining conversation. This Ted Bundy documentary, right? They had good times. Like Ted Bundy had a family. Yeah, he had a um like I don't think he ever married her, but like a girlfriend, and girlfriend had a daughter, and they spent time like a family together, right? Yes, there are good moments teaching him how to ride a bike. They kind of detail this in the documentary. None of that shit matters, like at the end of the day. Like those people are fucking destroyed, right? They're living, they have a present and a future, right? And that's their past. And they'll always, even though those moments exist, those good moments, it's all fucked. Like whenever they look, so they have to go through this incredible process of healing and therapy, and like and they'll never be the same. Like those moments are the things that happen to them, the trauma and the damage that happened to them, they're not reparable. They're not, can't fix those things, right? So it's like I guess that's the reason why you have to leave these things open a little bit to let people absorb and to think about things in their own way instead of like comforting.
I get what you're saying, and I don't think he or anyone would say that that trauma is gone forever.
Yeah.
But you have to ask yourself, a story has to have an ending, right? What is a more, or which, not even better or worse, but which ending do you want to have? That she gets this opportunity and it doesn't matter because she's so messed up from the rest of her life that she can't enjoy it, or that she gets this little bit of hope finally, and it's about trying to make the best out of what you do have. Like for me, again, and I think movies have trended darker because maybe they feel more real or more, in a way safer because it's like we're not pulling anything positive out of this. But like if it were
But
just like she gets something and everything is negative and it just ends on a downer and
I
like
don't
the
think it has to be
message or like,
negative. No, I don't think, like, I
but
don't think leaving things open is dark though, right? Like I don't think, like, like I don't
but
think.
what, so you're saying how open, right? Like, so we don't see how she reacts to, because it's not like this, like she meets her children and it's not like everything is like perfect, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of like pain in that I
sure.
felt, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's a beautiful, like, I thought it was relatively, or as good as they did try to like the plot points, like she does kind of tick off every box, right? Like she gets a house, she gets a job, like a store of her own, she meets her children. Like I thought it was pretty restrained. It's not like she was like this transformed into this overjoyed person and everything was perfect. So like I don't know. It's endings are hard, right? Like
They are. Yeah.
you struggle with what, so it's easy to say like, well, we should leave it more open, we should, but like what, and again, we're putting ourselves on the spot, so
Yeah.
that's not what happened. But like what is a more questioning, more open ending to this? And is that by nature less satisfying? Because if it is, then that's not a Spielberg
It might
thing,
be able
right?
to be linked to what you started off saying, Dom, about like the first moments of the movie where it's like Spielberg is making you a promise to something, and then he fulfills it at the end, for
Yeah.
better or worse.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Um, um,
That opening shot is
it,
just
as
it
far
it,
as
it
as far as like its applications in real life, it's very poor. But he told us a story. He sort of like fulfilled the contract, as it were. And I don't have any, I mean, this goes back to like very basic principles that Sol and I were taught in NYU in the writing courses, which is like, who is the character? What do they want? Who is the protagonist and what do they want? It's Celie, and she wants her sister. And at the end, she gets her sister, and that's how we
Yeah.
know the movie's over. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like there are
Well,
lots of ways and paths to get there, and styles and all that. You could even argue that it's too long, but it feels very short to me always, and I don't know why. I mean, in any case, like I feel like that I was he delivered as promised, I guess, you know, and alongside what Tom had started off saying.
I agree he delivered what promised, and also like it I think I think when we have not disagreements, but like when we have different takes on these things, especially Soul and I, it's because we're different audience members, and I feel like I'm a much more simplistic audience member because um like I'm much less bored by traditional storytelling, I think. So for me, like I watch a movie, character gets put through the ringer and obstacles, etc., and then they overcome those in a way. And like that feeling is like something totally positive for me and something that is satisfying for me. But it seems like for Soul, a lot of those times it's like it seems like that is less of a satisfying result. Like you're more interested in things being muddier at the end. And that's I think more on like the art side than the entertainment side. Whereas like I think The Color Purple is like both, obviously, but I think Spielberg has never made a movie where he didn't want the sort of quote unquote masses to enjoy it.
Yeah. And that's kind of and that's why
Um,
they chose him, right? Right. I think that's right. That's why he was like,
I would
why would
imagine,
you
yeah.
want Spielberg to make your movie, right? Because you want the bag, because he's going to bring in a ton of money, a huge audience, right? And like it's going to be a
Nevertheless, I
successful
think it
film.
was a risky choice, wasn't it, to pick him?
In
Or
the
was
80s,
it?
I don't
I don't know.
know. I
What
don't
do
know in
you
the 80s if it
No,
was
it was
risky.
the safest choice to pick him. The
really
absolute
to
safest
tell
choice.
this
Yeah.
like deeply personal story of like an African American woman going through an abusive
They wanted it to be
relationship?
the most successful it could possibly be, right?
Okay.
That's why you hire Spielberg, because that's everyone knows who Spielberg is.
I wonder
He's
if like Alice Walker was okay with it. I
I
don't
don't
know. I mean,
know.
I've just
I'd like to look that up
I
now.
might I would have been less surprised if Alice Walker was like, yeah, I don't know if like a white male is like the most obvious choice here. I don't know anything about this, so I don't know
I don't
what
know
she
anything
But I
about
thought.
it
think there's a
either.
level, I think there's a level, I get all that, but I think there's a level where you have to step back as you're Alice Walker and someone tells you Steven Spielberg is going to make your movie, right?
Yeah.
Like it, it's too like it's like a different level in terms of like
It is.
okay,
It's
this
like
is going to be seen, it's going to be an
your life is
Oscar
gonna
contender, it's going
change.
to be,
It's yeah,
it's a
it's
huge thing. It'd be one thing if there was like a different black director or if you want to direct it yourself, like to say like, oh no, this makes more sense. But like it's a hard thing. I don't know. Like I'm not the hugest Spielberg fan. I like a lot of his movies. I'm not like, but if I ever wrote anything, literally doesn't matter what. It could be a story about having Italian immigrant parents, but like whatever, something that Spielberg had no experience doing. Even if I did want to really direct it myself, and still, if someone came to me and were like, "Hey, Spielberg wants to direct this," I'd be like, "Sure, I'm jumping in." Like, there's some things that are so hard to say no to that it's almost too much to expect.
yeah. I mean the opportunities that are gonna come from that, right? Like I mean look at what happened with Color Purple, like musicals, and
Well,
there's a new one
also,
now, right? Yeah, just
yeah,
released, right? Or that's coming out or something. I
Not
don't know.
seen it, but of course I have to. But yeah.
These
but
create jobs, and it's like
I mean, don't get
but
me wrong, I'm not actually that person. I
yeah.
think anybody can write any old story, honestly. So it's not that it's not even that I'm playing devil's advocate and asking the question. It's just sort of it's a point of view that's very much out there, and authenticity and sort of that type of thing. The thing about movies that I think like people fail to bring to that conversation is the fact that it is already such an abstraction. It's a fucking movie. Can we just like
Yeah.
relax?
Well,
Yeah.
and also it's like you're telling these characters' experience. You're not necessarily telling like, but also it's 40 years ago, man. Like almost 40 years ago, right? It's 39 years ago. So I think absolutely if this were to be made today without any baggage and like having it existed before, I don't think Spielberg would be. I think filmmaking was different back then. I don't think some people for sure, but I don't think it was as much a mainstream thought or conversation to be like, hey, maybe we should consider having somebody who's closer to this material in some way. And I also think that's on filmmakers too to say no, right? If somebody
Yeah.
does, if you're a giant filmmaker and somebody offers you something that you don't um, feel like you're really the person who should do it, you should say that, you know?
Yeah, it is interesting that he decided to take this on. Like it is, yeah, I don't know.
I love
But
it. I love that he did it.
I think he took it on because of what you said before, right? This was the safest. If you're going to make something where the material is as dark as The Color Purple and you want it to have a chance, you
Yeah,
basically call Spielberg in to say like, "Hey, make the version of this that's palatable to audiences," and he did it, right?
Jesus, yeah.
He was tasked with making a palatable version of very dark
yeah,
material in 1985, and he did it. And he made a movie that's still worthy of watching and talking about today. And again, as I said in the beginning, I don't think that he was supposed to make the darker version of this movie and failed at it.
right.
I think he made the Spielberg. He was hired to make the Spielberg version. He wanted to
Exactly.
make the Spielberg version, and he did make the Spielberg version.
Open with the flowers, right? And the sisters, you close with it. Like it's
Yeah.
you get what you get what you bought, right? You bought this from Spielberg, and that's what you get. That's that you get predictability, you get you get
But
consistency.
you also get more people watching a movie and
Yeah,
experiencing and thinking about these characters
that's
than
true.
would if it was some smaller person or some super dark tale, right?
Totally agree.
That's always the trade-off. It's
Yeah.
like if you want to get people thinking about stuff, it has to be wrapped in a palatable package. Otherwise, you're going to be preaching to an audience where you're only it's literally the reason I made my feature film as like a satire comedy
Yeah.
about the environment was because I watched Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth and I was like, hey, everyone in this theater with me right now is already super on board with this. So this documentary is not really gonna do what it's supposed to do. So I made like this satire comedy version to try to sell it as like, let's make people laugh and put a lot of these same um facts and get people thinking about green stuff, etc. Because I do believe like that's how you get people to think about stuff they wouldn't ordinarily. Um, and like I think Spielberg did that with The Color Purple because he definitely reached a wide audience
Yeah.
that a filmmaker who was trying to make the hard hitting version wouldn't be able to do. And again, that version of the film is totally valid and probably could and should be made too, but it's just you're doing it for different reasons.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that discussion. If you found it interesting, informative, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It'll really help us out. We have some really cool discussions lined up for you, so I hope you're looking forward to them, and I'll see you next time.